I used to think our life together was solid, steady as a stone, predictable in the best way. Every morning, I'd wake up to the sound of her humming in the kitchen, the faint aroma of coffee drifting down the hall. Her smile, when she saw me, always carried that spark I'd fallen for years ago. Or at least, I believed it did. We met 6 years back at a mutual friend's dinner party. She was wearing this simple navy dress, nothing flashy, yet she commanded the room. I remember thinking, she's out of my league. Somehow, she laughed at my clumsy jokes, and by the end of the night, we were already making plans to see each other again. From there, everything moved quickly: late-night drives, shared playlists, whispered promises about the future. Marriage came 2 years later, and I thought we were building something that would last forever. Our home wasn't fancy, but it was ours. A modest suburban place with peeling white paint on the porch and a garden she swore she'd get around to fixing. We'd spend Friday nights curled up on the couch, her feet tucked under my leg, watching movies we'd seen a dozen times. On Sundays, we'd go grocery shopping together, arguing over which cereal to buy. It was ordinary and I loved it. But lately, small things had begun to feel off. She started dressing a little differently, more makeup, sharper outfits, even when she was just running errands. Her phone, once left face up on the coffee table, now never left her side. She'd tilt the screen away when I walked by, laughing at texts I wasn't privy to. I told myself not to be paranoid. Everyone's entitled to privacy, right? Still, the unease lingered like a low hum in the background of my days. One evening, she got a call while we were eating dinner. She excused herself, stepping out to the porch. The tone in her voice was soft, almost playful, different from the one she used with me lately. When she came back in, she claimed it was her sister. I nodded, forcing a smile, but something in her eyes made my stomach tighten. It wasn't the call itself, it was the way she avoided my gaze afterward. I brushed it off, telling myself we were just in a rut. Maybe work stress, maybe the fading of that honeymoon phase people always talk about. But in quiet moments, when she was out and the house felt too still, I'd catch myself wondering if I really knew her as well as I thought. I didn't know it yet, but the ground beneath me was already starting to crack. The truth was coming, and it was bigger than anything I could have imagined. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. People change, relationships evolve. But the little things began piling up, tiny inconsistencies that, on their own, might be harmless, yet together formed a pattern I couldn't ignore. She started coming home later, claiming she was swamped at work. I tried to make her laugh about it. "Hey, I'm starting to forget what you look like in daylight," but my jokes landed flat. Her responses grew shorter, her smile thinner. There were whole evenings when her mind seemed elsewhere, as if she were physically present, but drifting in some private world where I wasn't invited. One Tuesday, she said she had to stay late for a project deadline. I believed her until I noticed the timestamp charge on our joint account, a trendy cafe across town, far from her office. When I asked about it casually the next day, she brushed it off, saying she'd grabbed coffee with a coworker. No names, no details. Her voice was light, but her eyes darted away from mine just a little too quickly. The phone habits got worse. She began carrying it into the bathroom, sleeping with it under her pillow. Notifications were silenced. Screen brightness turned low. Once, I caught a glimpse of a message flash across the top, just a first name, no surname. She snatched the phone up before I could even process it, muttering something about work stuff. I wanted to confront her outright, but doubt kept me in check. What if I was wrong? What if my paranoia ended up hurting us more than whatever was actually going on? Still, my chest felt tight every time she laughed at something on that phone, a sound that used to be mine alone. I decided to confide in someone, my oldest friend, Amir. He listened without judgment, then leaned forward and said, "Look, man, if something feels wrong, it usually is. But you need proof before you say a word. Trust but verify." Those words stuck with me. I began to pay more attention, not obsessively, but deliberately. I'd note the time she left, the excuses she gave, the subtle changes in her routines. And the more I watched, the clearer the pattern became. The late nights, the vague explanations, the lingering scent of unfamiliar cologne or perfume on her clothes. One night, she said she was heading to a friend's place to catch up. I offered to drive her. She declined immediately, saying she didn't want to trouble me. That was the first time I felt the shift from uneasy suspicion to near certainty. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, hearing the quiet tick of the wall clock. Something was happening behind my back. I just didn't know what yet. And in that still, sleepless darkness, I made a silent decision. The next time her story didn't add up, I wouldn't let it slide. I'd find out the truth, no matter how big it turned out to be. It happened on a Friday, a day I'll never forget. She told me she was going to a late meeting with a client, something about finalizing a project before the weekend. I nodded, kissed her on the cheek, and watched her walk out the door. But the moment it shut, my chest filled with that same heavy, suffocating pressure I'd been carrying for weeks. I didn't plan it at first. But 30 minutes later, I found myself grabbing my jacket and keys, telling myself I'd just happened to be near her office. Maybe surprise her with coffee, maybe prove my suspicions wrong. The drive felt longer than it should have. Every traffic light seemed to linger, each one whispering, "Turn back. You don't want to know." But I kept going. Her office building came into view, dark. No cars in the lot except mine. My stomach dropped. I called her. She answered after the second ring, voice warm but hurried. "Hey, I'm in a meeting. Can I call you later?" I glanced at the empty lot. "At the office?" I asked. "Yeah," she said quickly. "I'll be home late. Love you." And then she hung up. That was the moment I knew. I checked the location sharing app we'd once used to coordinate errands. She'd forgotten to disable it. A little blue blinked on the map, miles away, in a neighborhood I didn't recognize. My pulse hammered in my ears as I drove, each turn tightening the knot in my chest. Finally, I pulled up to a small, dimly lit bar. Through the window, I saw her, laughing, leaning in close to a man I'd never seen before. His hand rested casually on hers, her body angled toward him in that unmistakable way that says this is more than friendship. Time slowed. The chatter of the bar seemed muted, the colors sharper. I could see every detail, the way she touched her hair when she laughed, the way he smiled at her like she was the only person in the world. I stepped inside. My footsteps sounded too loud against the floor. She saw me before I reached their table, her smile freezing, eyes widening in shock. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice a mix of guilt and defiance. I looked at her, then at him. "Guess I could ask you the same thing." He shifted uncomfortably, muttering something about giving us space. She didn't stop him when he left. The air between us was thick, suffocating. Words tumbled out, half excuses, half accusations, but I barely heard them. All I could see was the truth, plain as day. The trust we'd built was gone. I turned and walked out, the night air cold against my skin. Behind me, I heard her call my name, but I didn't look back. Some things, once seen, can't be unseen. The night after I saw them together, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the image of her with him replaying over and over in my mind like a cruel loop I couldn't shut off. Every detail, the way her hand fit in his, the way she leaned in, was carved into me. By morning, the disbelief had faded into something heavier. Not rage exactly. Not yet. More like a deep, hollow ache that seemed to drain the strength from my body. I didn't text her. I didn't answer when she called. I just let the silence stretch. For 2 days, I avoided her entirely. I stayed at a friend's place, ignoring the buzzing of my phone. When I finally went home, the house felt wrong. The couch we used to curl up on felt foreign. The kitchen, once warm with her laughter, felt cold. She was there, waiting, eyes red from crying. She launched into apologies, explanations, claims that it wasn't what it looked like, that things had just gotten complicated. But I'd seen enough to know better. Words couldn't patch the hole she'd torn through the trust we'd built. I told her I needed space. Real space. She asked if there was a chance we could fix it. My voice was steady when I said, "Not this time." The days that followed were quiet but not peaceful. Friends and family reached out, offering sympathy, dinners, advice. At first, I didn't want to talk, but slowly, I started opening up. I realized something important. Betrayal isn't just about losing someone. It's about losing the version of yourself that trusted them completely. So I began to rebuild piece by piece. I picked up my old guitar, something I'd set aside years ago. I started running in the mornings, feeling the cold air burn in my lungs, reminding me I was still alive, still capable of moving forward. The house began to change too. I moved furniture around, repainted the living room, replaced the framed photos on the walls. It wasn't about erasing her, it was about reclaiming the space as mine. One afternoon, while unpacking a box from the garage, I found an old note she'd written me early in our relationship. It said, "You're my safe place." I stared at it for a long moment before folding it and dropping it into the trash. I'm not bitter. I'm not broken. I'm different. Wiser, maybe. More careful with who I let close. The hurt is still there, but it doesn't control me anymore. Betrayal, I've learned, isn't the end of the story. It's just the point where you decide what kind of person you'll be when you stand back up. And when I look at myself now, I know the truth. It was big, what she did, what I lost. But I am bigger.